So we the new slaves. Athletes are literally the new slaves.
You've got to hear what this ESPN commentator just said about athlete contracts. She essentially compared them to slavery.
It's almost like the contracts, are the new slave chains, right? So, you have to sign this contract and sign this document and sign this document. It's like you're binded to this. And then if you break that, that's your livelihood, that's your life. So we the new slaves. Athletes are literally the new slaves because we need this. Our families, our friends depend on this contract to eat.
Yeah. So, Hannah, this is from a new series on ESPN Plus featuring anti-racism so-called author and scholar Ibram X. Kendi, who's one of the leading, critical race theory, left-wing spokespeople on ideas about race. And he's actually has a bunch of scandals involved. But anyway, it's from the new ESPN Plus series called Skin in the Game with Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, which began streaming last month on ESPN Plus and follows Kendi as he interviews athletes, experts, and journalists about racism and sports. So, look, it features people like Jamel Hill and Kamal Bell, and each episode ends with a roundtable discussion led by Kendi. I want to just address this because I'm not somebody who believes that racism is no longer a problem at all in America, or it's all just, there's no real issues. But the idea that voluntary multi-million-dollar contracts for pro athletes are akin to slavery, and it's not just this clip. You actually hear that argued in certain liberal corners of the Black community and the discourse on racial issues. It's such an absurd notion. And frankly, this is the woke crowd that gets offended over everything. Isn't that offensive to the people whose families and ancestors were literally sold like cattle, who in one of the most horrific things in all of human history were bought and sold, had no freedom, were killed, were sexually assaulted, all these things. And you're saying that the voluntary contracts you choose to sign for millions of dollars to different teams and the lifestyle that follows as a pro athlete is somehow akin to modern day slavery. First off, it's so offensive, it's so rude, and also it's ridiculous. NBA players are some of the most privileged people ever to exist in the history of the United States, of America and of the world. Now, they worked hard to get there, don't get me wrong, but they make millions of dollars, they play a game for a living, right? They've got it made. Not to say they have no problems or that they might not have some legitimate grievances with the owners or the contracts or whatever, but they're not slaves. Give me a fucking break. They're not slaves.
Yeah, see, I actually am new to this argument when it comes to pro sports. I'm more familiar with it when it comes to college level discussions, in which I've been a little bit sympathetic. And I think calling it slavery is still asinine and completely just an incredulous thing to say. That's not really what I've heard people talk about, but I heard them talk about how there is systemic racism in the college football world, largely because many of the players are Black, many of them come from impoverished backgrounds, and essentially they would come to college and have to play for free, making the schools millions of dollars. And not only were they playing for free, they also, until recently, were not even allowed to license their own name and image. Now, I always had a massive issue with that. I've always thought that it was actually a free speech, free market violation that they couldn't license their own image and names. Glad to see that that's been changed. It's a policy reform I pushed for some time. And I think there was some credence to that argument because the excuse has always been that, they get free college educations in exchange. But many people would push back and say, one, the quality of those college educations is not always all that great. Their priority is the game. They often have to miss a lot of their education in order to focus on that. Teachers just pass them along. Many of them get kind of bogus degrees anyways that are just easy to pass because they know their attention's not going to be on school. So they're getting history majors or political science majors, things like that. And so many of them come out of college without that good of an education, without a real pathway to work. And the majority of them will never go play in the NFL and make millions of dollars. And on top of that, many of them get severely injured, right? And some of them even have career-ending injuries in college. So I think that there's some validity to complaints within that system.
Still not slavery, though.
Still not slavery. Still just completely absurd to refer to that as slavery. But it's even more absurd when you get into the pro sports level because this is the top, 1-2% of athletes that make it to that level. they have a wide range of abilities to choose where they play and who they play for and what their contracts look like, especially after they've been successful in the league for a period of time. They are compensated handsomely. They have endless endorsement deals at their fingertips. They simply have to play a sport for a living. Like, you're not getting me with this argument whatsoever. And I think this is what happens when you give somebody whose brain is broken by racial issues an hour to fill on TV every day. He's going to have to come up with some crazy content to make that work. And I just, I'm kind of surprised ESPN is doing this. It really seems, I don't use this a lot, but it seems especially woke to give this guy this kind of programming on that
Unless
channel.
he's like embroiled in a financial scandal that we won't get into now, but he's got a lot of bad stuff going on.
Yeah, I just know he's kind of a hack. I haven't honestly followed him all that closely, but everything I've heard him say has been absolutely crazy and cracked. So anyway, I won't be tuning into this programming. This is absurd and it's offensive and it's infantilizing, honestly, to these players who have worked their butts off to get to the top positions and are able to now command these kinds of pay. I just think it's kind of demeaning towards hard work and towards the people who have, put in not only like the physical effort, but the mental effort to get to that level of performance is really impressive. So deducing that to their race and making it about slave, it's just gross. I can't stand that.